Hello everyone, and welcome to this video. Many of you ask me, is it better to connect your solar panels in series or in parallel? Choosing the right connection method for your panels, it's a crucial step to ensure the efficiency and good performance of your installation. Because, for example, in cloudy weather, you could end up with zero production in some cases, while in others, you might still manage to produce electricity. All of this, simply because of the way you connect your panels. In this video, we'll explore the advantages and disadvantages of both methods, explaining why one might be better suited to your situation than the other. In reality, it's possible to create all sorts of setups, series, parallel, or even a combination of both. However, these connections must be done carefully. Otherwise, you risk damaging your solar panels, or worse, causing a fire. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give a little like, and feel free to ask your questions in the comments section. We'll start our explanations with a very common type of connection, connecting solar panels in series. This involves connecting the positive wire of one panel to the negative wire of the next. In a series connection, each solar panel increases the total voltage of the system. The key characteristic of this setup, if you connect several panels, their voltages add up, but the current intensity remains the same as that of a single panel. To better illustrate my point, I looked up the specifications of a recent 420 watt solar panel that we will connect in series. Its voltage is 45.5 volts. Its current is 11.3 amperes. And finally, its power, as I mentioned, is 420 watts. Here, since we have connected these three panels in series, calculating the total voltage in this configuration is very simple. Total voltage equals 45.5 volts multiplied by 3 equals 136.5 volts. As for the current, it remains the same as that of a single panel, which is 11.3 amperes. If you are using an MPPT regulator, it must be able to handle this voltage, and you need to ensure that it can accept a current of 11.3 amperes on the input side. In reality, it is not the current that is an issue here, but the voltage. We will need a regulator that supports, for example, 150 volts. You could very well use a solar regulator from Victron Energy for this setup. You can see here that the value of 150 represents its maximum allowable voltage, and it has a maximum current of 35 amperes, which fits perfectly with our example system. Another interesting feature of this device is that it supports a battery bank ranging from 12 volts to 48 volts. Finally, do not forget to protect your electrical circuit by adding a fuse. Since the maximum fuse value in series for these panels is 25 amperes, you must ensure that the fuse used to protect your circuit is suitable for this intensity. This is specified in the solar panels technical documentation. So, what are the advantages of connecting solar panels in series? By connecting the panels in series, the voltages add up, making it easier to reach the voltage required for an inverter or charge controller to operate. A higher voltage reduces losses on the cables because the current is lower. This allows for smaller cable cross sections and shorter lengths, making it much more economical. As for the disadvantages, shade on a single panel affects the entire string, as the string's performance is limited by the weakest panel. Additionally, if one panel fails, the entire system stops working. A question that often comes up is, which setup should you choose for an RV? On the roof of a vehicle, solar panels are often installed flat, which reduces their efficiency. Moreover, in cloudy weather, a series setup will deliver better performance. Here's why. Let's say you have two solar panels connected in series. Suppose one panel only generates 10 volts due to cloud cover. The panels could more easily reach a total voltage of 20 volts, which might be sufficient to exceed the minimum voltage threshold, often around 18 to 24 volts, depending on the solar regulator, and thus charge your batteries. In a parallel setup, solar panels are connected in such a way that all the positive wires are connected together, and all the negative wires are also connected together. The main advantage of this type of configuration, the current adds up while the voltage remains the same as that of a single panel. To better illustrate this, let's use the same 420 watt solar panel we discussed earlier. Here, since we've connected these three panels in parallel, calculating the total voltage in this configuration is very simple. The voltage of 45.5 volts for one panel remains unchanged, even if you connect several panels in parallel. Now, in a parallel setup, the currents from the panels add up. For example, if each panel generates a current of 11.3 amperes, the total current will be the sum of the currents from the three panels, 33.9 amperes in total. In this type of setup, the choice of the solar charge controller will be slightly different. Why? Because the voltage is relatively low, so special attention must be paid to the maximum current. You could use a Victron Energy solar regulator for this installation. As you can see, the value of 100 represents its maximum allowable voltage, and it has a maximum current of 50 amperes, which fits perfectly with our parallel configuration. This particular model can also be used with a battery bank between 12 and 24 volts. When it comes to protecting the electrical circuit, it's even more critical, since the current is very high. The main fuse must be sized to support the total current of 33.9 amperes without tripping during normal operation, but it must also protect the system in case of overload. A 40 ampere fuse would be perfectly suitable in this case. As for the advantages of connecting solar panels in a parallel configuration, shade on a single panel does not affect the other panels. The same goes for a malfunction. The parallel setup makes it easy to add additional panels without disrupting the operation of the installation. It is ideal for connecting panels with slightly different characteristics in terms of voltage and power. Now, regarding the disadvantages, this setup requires higher capacity cables and connectors to avoid overheating and losses as we discussed earlier. The voltage remains that of a single panel, which may not be sufficient for charge controllers or inverters, especially in cloudy weather. To combine the advantages of these two types of setups, it is, of course, possible to create a configuration called 2S2P. This means two panels connected in series, but set up in parallel. Nothing explains this better than an electrical diagram. Here, you have two panels of 45.5 volts in series, where the voltages add up to a total of 91 volts, while the current remains the same at 11.3 amperes. By connecting these two series of solar panels in parallel, the voltage remains at 91 volts, but this time, the current adds up. This results in a solar installation delivering 22.6 amperes at a voltage of 91 volts. For an off-grid installation or a grid-tied home, the choice between a series setup with a centralized inverter or a parallel setup with microinverters depends on sunlight conditions and the orientation of the panels. If the installation is well oriented and free of significant shading, a series setup with a centralized inverter for all panels is often preferred. In this case, the panels are connected in series to increase the overall system voltage, which is generally more suitable for inverters. This results in better overall efficiency. However, this requires all panels to be on the same side of the roof. Conversely, for installations where panels are exposed to intermittent shading, or are on roofs with different orientations, microinverters are used for each panel. In this configuration, each panel operates independently of the others, and each microinverter independently converts the energy produced by each panel into alternating current. The main advantage of a parallel setup with microinverters is that it reduces the impact of shading, and if one panel fails, it does not affect the production of the other panels. Finally, for vehicles like camper vans, a single solar panel is often used. However, in cases where it is possible to install two panels, the series setup is preferred for better efficiency, as we mentioned earlier in this video. For more information, check the description of this video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and once again, feel free to ask your questions in the comments section.